Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. As my good friend Mark Ostrander is wearing, GT is on assignment in Phoenix, spreading the word. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you, David?
I'm good. I'm relieved.
You had a big weekend, didn't you? You had some event going on?
Yeah, we had the Missouri Border Brawl. Randy Couture came in town for it. We had 19 matches. Kids really put on a great show, a ton of one-point matches, which is, kind of – my dad's over there keeping team score. He's the only one who cares who won the duel. But he's doing it on pen and paper like the old school days. But it was great. Always good to see Randy. Great cause, good event. I'd like to say great event, but that's for other people to say. So it was good. Thank you to our partners at Flow Wrestling. Thanks to all the people that made it happen, from getting us on the air to the DJ, to the trainer, to the table workers, referees. My mom and dad are instrumental in it. Maryville University brought the mat and took it back. My guy, Matt Biles at 4-6s, provided the product. So, and I'll tell you, Nike killed it. We used the two-piece uniforms plus quarter zip. And then I always buy a third color quarter zip for my staff, and we got white ones this year.
Yeah.
And I had like 8 people try to buy mine off my back.
Really?
Yeah. So GT and I are already talking about what we're going to do at NCAA Border Brawl. And I know your plans are up in the air, sir, but if you do, come down, man, on Tuesday for Kansas City. You be the honorary coach with my dad. It'd be a blast. To me, that's a bucket list one. Maybe you and I jump on the mic for a play-by-play for a match or two as well. Mm-hmm. So for me, my next big project is we're full swing now with Hall of Fame duels, getting all that stuff finalized. We had a board call yesterday. That was something your son was planning on coming to last year until the weather got bonkers.
Yep.
So if Ben is watching, your VIP invitation remains open. It always does. So some great teams there this year. 8 of the top 10 teams final in the team rankings from the end of last year. And I spoke to Rob Sherrill at Wynn and Willie at Rockfin, Matt Scouts, and the team rankings will start coming out here fairly soon for high school too, which is a very, very difficult process. I will say that. So, yeah. I mean, because you got kids graduating, you got kids, 8th graders that won Fargo coming in, and then
you got transfers.
Yeah, I was about to say they don't have a portal, but they do have transfers.
They have a portal, kind of, yeah.
They don't have an official portal, but they have transfers.
Well, all right. Stillwater has kind of a portal because every recruit, they get a lot of guys coming in.
So does Iowa City.
So does Iowa City. So does probably Penn State. I mean,
all I'm saying in general, I don't want to get into listen, kids want to wrestle where wrestling is important and where they're going to get good coaching. So let's say in a positive way, right? If you're a 12-month-a-year wrestler, you don't want to wrestle for a 4-month-of-the-year coach. And, so people are going to find those opportunities. Parents invest thousands of dollars in these kids, and they don't want a coach to just punch in the clock. And that's totally understandable. So if we put it in that light, I think it's super positive. I'd rather focus just, if we're going to talk about that event, just how many great teams we got. So, I mean, we have teams from California, we have teams from Pennsylvania, we have teams from Florida, New Jersey, and everywhere in between. So,
but when you got 8 of the top 10 teams from last year, David, that's pretty impressive. I don't think there's ever been an event that I can think of that had 8 of the top 10 teams at one location wrestling.
Well, I truly appreciate that. It's been a team effort. The folks over there, Leroy Smith, Clay Hudson, Ed Gallegos, Ethan Kyle. When I was brought onto this event last May, we had to start late on calling teams, and Ethan and I split up the calls, and he had a great job. Probably filled close to half the field, to be honest. He got the 4 Oklahoma teams, which, he could get quickly, but were also super instrumental, because if I'm calling you and you're the coach at XYZ High School, and I'm like, well, we've already got Stillwater, Edmond North, Bixby, and Tuttle, that certainly, like, okay, you guys are going to run a tournament,
Yeah.
So, this year we were able to keep all the teams that ended up in the top 50 last year that we wanted back, and then add some really, really good teams. If anybody watched that event, I guess I can tell them quickly, we've added Buchanan. We've added Wyoming Seminary. We added St. Peter's. We added Massillon Perry, and then Joliet Catholic. So, it's a really, really good tournament, and super excited to be a fairly significant part of it. I get to play tournament director and also do play-by-play, and we're adding a clinic this year and running a couple socials. And so I know you have limited vacation days, but if you and Dana want to come down.
And this is in Stillwater, right?
It's in Gallagher, Iowa. And if people that haven't been to Stillwater, Gallagher, Iowa, and the Hall of Fame basically share a parking lot.
Okay.
And it's when school's not in session, so it's a lot easier to get around town,
Yeah.
Last year we had some inclement weather, but that's the normal weather for Stillwater is 50s, so it's a lot warmer than St. Louis or Iowa.
Sure.
So, yeah. So anyway, we'll talk more about that when we get closer, but thank you for asking about Border Brawl. We've been doing that now since 2015, so really appreciate it. USA Wrestling is always great to us as well. So, all right. Got 3 main subjects today. 1 great, 2 not so good. Do you want to start with the women's at the World, the Greco at the World, or Iowa and the gambling?
I think the gambling's going to be real quick.
We'll start there. Go ahead.
I mean, these kids, did something that they shouldn't have done. And I'm not saying 21-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to gamble because it's legal, but when you go to an institution, you're not supposed to gamble on your own institution. And obviously that's how you get this kind of suspension where you can no longer wrestle for, the school that you're at, or play football at the school that you're at. And, Iowa had, I think it was 4 that were suspended indefinitely, basically done. They're done. Assad, Brands, Cassiope, and Seabrook. And then they have 2 that didn't actually bet on Iowa teams, so they probably got into like fantasy football and are going to lose maybe
a portion of their season.
3 goals or something like that, maybe 4. 5.
The big update is what Nelson Brands posted, though. I mean, I think you're doing a great job of laying out what we already knew up till a week ago. But Nelson Brands tweeted, and I'm just going to say Twitter because I don't know what the verb is for X, but he tweeted that he was suspended, that his career was over, and here's why. And basically, short version, he put in like $5 on DraftKings and got $200 worth of credits, and he showed his entire account, and he put in maybe 100 or 200 and cashed out like around 400 or 500. And he said he had no idea that that he would lose a year, and that or end his career, and that he he didn't know about the meeting or missed the meeting, and then he took it down because I'm sure somebody advised him legally, like, basically ignorance is not the best defense for something like this.
Yeah.
So I cannot remember if I said this publicly or privately, but I know I thought these guys would probably end up, and maybe it's what I hoped, that they would get a lighter sentence and be able to wrestle with the Big 12 or Big 10s and NCAAs. Because just, I don't know if I said that on the air, but either way, I was wrong. Sure looks like I was wrong. So, and I don't know how much of that was wishful thinking versus what I thought. Because, like, I certainly have good relationships with the coaching staff at Iowa and certain kids like Gabe Arnold and stuff, but I'm not like an Iowa fan. I'm a fan of wrestling. So This wasn't me rooting for Iowa. This is me rooting for wrestling.
Sure.
We got enough people on the show that are fans of Iowa and live in Iowa. So,
But I mean, like, listen, if this was happening at Mizzou,
I don't think you'd be rooting for anybody to be suspended there. Like nobody wants anybody suspended unless they did something horrifically wrong. And this doesn't feel like it's horrifically wrong rather.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they bet on their own sports or bet on their, own teammates to knowing, having inside information. So, and I agree with you to a certain extent, David, but there are rules that are put out there. Kids are supposed to know them, and I'm sure the coaches go through meetings just like we did, and when we had meetings coaching, that you expect the kids to live up to a certain standard. It's too bad for those 4 individuals. I'm sure they'll learn from it. I'm sure they'll be fine. They're all pretty good kids. I don't have anything bad to say about any of them. So
I think they might be better than pretty good kids. I think they might be great kids that just made
a mistake. They got into some stuff and gambling. This is why Iowa didn't want to have gambling legalized in the state anyways, because they know people make stupid decisions when it comes to, you got this pot of money out there. You think, oh man, I can't lose this bet. I'm going to bet everything I got on. They have to win. I mean, come on. And then they don't win. And then you're pretty much,
Well, here's the thing though. He said, I got the offer, saw the offer. I put in $5 and they give you $200 worth of bets. Okay. Yep. It did not look like he had a gamble. Like this is a lot different than Panero, which was like 40 some odd $1,000. Okay. So I think, let's put it this way. I used to gamble a lot. I told you that and I stopped. And it was because when I first gambled, it was like, okay, to make it worth watching the game. Like otherwise I just didn't care, so, I mean, the two, I went to Iowa State and I live in Missouri and neither one of them had great football teams. Okay. Just to be honest. So, but like you and me are in a fantasy football league. Sure. And so we're paying attention. Like, I think your quarterback is Jalen Hurts. So you're going to watch Philadelphia. Like Justin Herbert's my quarterback. And for me, that's enough. Like, we put in a few bucks a week and it's not very significant, but it gives us a reason to watch. And it's more bragging rights when we tease each other, your sons are in it and stuff like that. But I think the bottom line is the rules are the rules, right? And and then the other bottom line, which is against that, is these kids, this is really the only state where they're going after these kids. So it sucks. I mean, but like I was texting, you know who called me Sunday?
How would I know?
Your guy. One of
my
your
guy.
guys.
My guy called you.
Justin McClintock.
That's one of my guys. Yeah.
It's one of your guys, for real. Yeah. So
great.
we had a good kid that wrestled him a bunch of times. You had 2 good 125-pounders when our guy was there, and he wrestled Justin, and then he wrestled All Good. But Justin and I were talking about just everything that's going on, and he was very complimentary. He watched the brawl and he called me the next morning or texted me late that night. We talked the next morning, but he was just saying the same thing. Like they're good, they're really good kids, but the rules are the rules. But this all came down politically from above. And this is just, they wanted to crack down on gambling and these kids got caught in the wash.
Yep.
And, like my trash got picked up this morning. And like, let's say you're supposed to pick up your trash cans by 10 a.m. Well, I don't ever pick them up till 11:15 because we do the podcast. I'm like, I could get in trouble. It feels like a victimless crime, but I would be against the city ordinance.
Yeah.
So, anyway, like I'll tell you this though, like we were talking, like it's going to be very, very difficult for Iowa to All-American from 174 on up because it looks like it's going to be Kennedy. They're not really sure. Colby Franklin and Ben Keeter. And Kennedy was a 65 last year that didn't All-American. So now 74 is cleared out a little bit, like Plot moved up and stuff like that, but it's not like Kennedy's on that top 8 line yet. So, obviously they can All-American with Ayala. They probably will almost certainly will All-American with Real Woods, Franek, and Caliendo, and Victor Voinovich was round of 16 or 24 last year, but they might have 4 All-Americans.
Yep, they might.
If you have 4 All-Americans and 1 finalist, you're like a top 7 to 10 team.
Yep.
So, which would be interesting.
But they, the one thing Iowa does have going, and they've always taken a lot of pride in, is that they are a fairly deep room. They've got some pretty good backups that can come in and make noise. Now, I'm not saying at the NCAA tournament, but in duels, I think they will be competitive.
I'm sure they'll maybe lose 2 or 3 duels this year at the most, like Penn State, maybe Oklahoma State, now maybe Michigan or somebody, or Ohio State, right? But again, like, if I asked you what Michigan's dual meet record was last year, you don't know. You don't care.
I don't.
And you don't care. So, like, when we're talking about this, it's just all about how it impacts NCAAs. And I mean, honestly, the conference tournament doesn't matter. Penn State has won more national tournaments in the last 13 years than they have conference tournaments, because there's at least 1 year where Michigan beat them and 1 year where Ohio State beat them. And there's probably a year somewhere there where Iowa beat them. But it's all about the last dance in March.
True.
So, and listen, if you're an Iowa fan and you go, well, Kennedy's going to place and Colby Franklin's an amazing freshman and Ben Keeter is the truth. Sure. Not arguing, just saying on paper, they're not ranked in the top 8 right now. And Nelson Brands was ranked. Abe Assad would have been in the top 20. And
Cassiope was in the top.
Cassiope was top 4. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I give a little wiggle room there because if Gable comes in, everybody bumps down a spot. But I mean, 4th on a bad day in the rankings. So, I mean, that's a lot of points you give up.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about let's do this. Worlds are over. Greco, I will just kind of read off quickly what we did so we can, focus on more of a positive result. So we had a couple guys place in the top 10, Johnson, Sancho, Bay. No one qualified the weight, no medals, no, really that was it. And so, now we have to go through the Pan Am process. And again, we're generally the first or second best country in the Pan Ams, pretty much us and Cuba. Cuba's really good at Greco. And so now you're just praying for separation in the draws. And I did not go through and look at how Cuba did in the world. But just so people understand this, the best case scenario would have been if Cuba qualified all 6 weights, because then they don't wrestle in the Pan Ams. That's how it works. And there's 2 Pan Ams. There's the Pan Am Games and the championships. But the one that is the qualifier is the one that matters, really for the Olympics. It's the only one that matters for the Olympics. And so, and that is also the weekend between the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournaments in March.
Yep.
So we talked about this last week, but I've talked to several people off air, and it would be very difficult for the college guys to wrestle in that meet. So like in Greco, like a Zach Bronigal, it's probably unlikely that he would do that meet, just like we talked about Dayton Fix and Vito. So just putting that in the sug box. Women, let's make sure we go through the Olympic weights first. Sarah Hildebrandt, 3rd, qualified the weight. Dom Parrish, 0-1. Helen Maroulis, 3rd, qualified the weight. Kayla Miracle, 1-1, did not qualify the weight. Emma Bruntel, heartbreaker, made the semis and did the semi slide to 6th, and top 5 get in. So she doesn't qualify the weight. And then Adeline Gray, 3rd, qualifies the weight. So all the ladies that qualified the weight are sitting in the finals of the Olympic trials. I sometimes call it Final X, but it's not. It's the Olympic trial finals. But in other words, everyone's got to wrestle a bracket to get to them. The other 3 women are the number 1 seed, and they now have some version of the criteria, but needing to go qualify those weights for the Pan Ams. So let's talk first. We'll just start with Hildebrandt, and I'll pull up the brackets while we're talking. So, this is like 5-6 days ago, but I'm sure you watched it. So thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, she wrestled a good tournament. She lost to somebody that, if I'm not mistaken, she lost to last year in the finals of the Worlds.
Yeah.
But she then proceeded to beat her in a tournament this previous year in between the Worlds and this Worlds on a really good match. So, I mean, they're really even. and she ended up getting third, qualifying the weight. She will be a handful at the Olympics, trials here in the United States for any American to try to beat her out. And then when it comes to the Olympics, she's going to be a handful for anybody to beat her. So, I mean, I think she's sitting in a good spot right now. There's things that I'm sure she wants to work on, but I mean, she's got a phenomenal leg lace. She can finish a match just like that. So, yeah, I don't really have any concerns with her weight. So I think
she does cut a lot of weight. So for her, it's really good to, now sit. She she got a bye in the pigtail, then 10-0, 14-3. Then she lost 7-5. And then she won 5-0. And so, so just so people understand, they don't wrestle a third place match, but they do wrestle a fifth place match.
Yeah.
Okay. So people have to understand that. Dom Parrish, super disappointing, 0-1. Keep it moving there, 55.
She was a world champ last year too, wasn't she?
Yes, but she has not had a good year.
Yeah.
So she has not wrestled great. Winchester went 7-2, 11-1, 10-0, and lost to Akunu 4-2 in the final. She takes second. Great tournament for her, for Cowboy Wrestling Club. She'll have to now either try to go down to Dom Parrish's weight, and she's tall and thin and fit. I mean, all these athletes are fit, but in other words, 4.4 pounds is a lot, or up to Helen's weight. So 57. Just pulling up the bracket here. So Helen went 10-0, pin while winning 8-0, then won 8-3, then lost to Sakurai 6-0, and then won her match here 10-0, 10-6 against Lisak from Poland. So, Helen did an interview afterwards where she said she doesn't have a lot of tournaments left in her. Yep. The rumor I heard is she's going to be involved with the coaching staff in some capacity with Sunkist kids after the Olympics.
Yeah, and she'd do a good job there. I mean, they've got quite the women's program built with Sunkist, so I'm sure they would, the coaching staff would love to bring her in and have her, be part of the process.
Sure. Well, she's got credibility coming out the yin yang, right? Like,
sure. And I think the wrestling community really appreciates all the things she's done and what she's been able to accomplish. So who wouldn't want to have her as a coach?
And this is her third quad, I think, so that's a long time. That's a lot of wear and tear on your body. So 59. Jennifer Page Rogers went 11-0. She had a great tournament. She beat the Japanese wrestler Nanjo 6-4. Then lost to Zhang from China 5-1. And then in the Consies, she was up 4-0 and got a fall against Kolesnik. So she takes third. She will have to – I don't think she can go down. She's going to go up to Kayla's weight because they've wrestled before at that weight. Mm-hmm. She had lost to Kayla in the trials and came down. But really good tournament for her. And she beat Kayla one of the three matches in that special wrestle-off match like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So she does have it in her, and she's got good positive momentum now.
Yeah, and she was fun to watch. I mean, she's somebody that's been doing this a long time, and this was her first chance to be at the Worlds. So, and then she placed. And I know it was a non-Olympic weight, but if you watched her wrestle, man, she's got such a great build. She's strong, she's powerful, and she uses that really, really well when she's out there on the mat. It was fun to watch her, the smile on her face when she won the bronze. I mean, you could just tell the relief that she had. So, she was one of my favorite people to watch because sometimes somebody catches your eye and you're saying they're talking about her that this is her first, she's 30 or right close to 30. I think they said 30. And I'm thinking, wow, what has she been doing? And this was her first team she made, but she's been doing it a long time. So it's tough.
There's people like that. I remember John Fisher from Michigan never made a team, but he was always behind like John Smith or Colot or Brands. It's like that dude was really good. It
was fun to watch her. She was very entertaining, and kudos to her.
Yeah, and she got it done. Kayla Miracle was the 1 seed. She won 12-2. Then she lost 6-3. And then her athlete got teched 10-0. And then that athlete lost in the semis 2-1. So she was a couple spots away. Like she had to make the sems.
Yeah.
Because Matoki was there. So, and Matoki actually lost in the finals, which is, anytime a Japanese wrestler loses, it's at least theoretically an upset. So, Kayla has wrestled really well at Worlds before. This clearly is not her best performance. I mean, I feel fairly confident she'll qualify the weight, but the weight's not qualified. And so, and we cannot emphasize this enough. Just will quickly explain the process. The 5 people, it doesn't matter if it's men's, Greco, or women's, that qualified the weight, they do no longer wrestle in any other Olympic qualifying tournament. So that person does not my goodness, that person does not wrestle in their continental tournament. And they also do not wrestle in the last chance tournament. They cannot steal a spot. So those 5 people are in. Okay. Then we'll be selfish and get a little myopic for the Americans. They have to go through the Pan Ams, which is our continental. They have to make the finals. Okay. I don't know if they're wrestling a true second. I haven't heard that. And so if I haven't heard that, I'm assuming they're not. Okay. So you have to make the final. I could be wrong, but I haven't heard anything like that as of now. That would actually be better because then if you're the second best person, you're going to make it, even if you got a bad draw.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you take first or second, you, the other person in your bracket, and the other 6 people from the other 3 continentals are in. That's 13. Now, everybody else in the world piles into the last chance qualifier, and you got to take first, second, or third. So it's way easier to take first or second at the Pans than it is to take third at that last chance qualifier.
And just so people understand, you're exactly right, David, but it's not individuals that qualify for the Olympics, it's the countries. And that makes a big difference. So
in some countries, in the United States.
In some countries, it's the individual. They'd say, wait, we got a guy. So
or
he's
girl.
going. Yeah, or a girl.
Or woman.
So, I mean, but here in the United States, we're trying to qualify it as a team because then we have our own process of picking the team.
I mean, I think people know that based on like the Daniel Dennis Ramos situation, based on the Jordan Burroughs Kyle Dake situation. So when we say we've qualified the weight, they use the term quota a bunch, so whether it's we have a slot, we're in the quota, however you want to say it. So like, and I think we've said this enough times, that the people who are sitting in the finals of the trials.
Yep.
The best way to say it is the people that qualified the weight are at worst our Olympic alternate. Because they're second.
Yes.
Right now, they're guaranteed second.
Yep.
Okay. So, all right, we'll keep it moving. 65, Macy Kilty, hammer, dude. She had one of the qualifying matches, goes 10-0, 10-0, 11-2, 10-0, and then this tells you how good Ozaki is. She 10-0'd Kilty, or 10 rip, as GT likes to say, in a minute. So Kilty now is in our Olympic trial semifinals, and she either goes down to the Kayla Miracle weight or up to the Emma Bruntel weight. And she's in a good spot because we didn't qualify either one of those weights. So she's sort of like Vito. Like, actually, Vito is the perfect analogy. Like, same thing with Zane Rutherford if he goes down. They're at a weight where there's a 1 seed, but there's nobody qualified. So, and they actually get more rest now than the 1 seed. So she's young, bro. She's gonna be good for a minute.
Yeah.
So Emma Bruntel, we talked about her. She won 2-2, 6-3, 2-1. So did some Lee Kemp wins, grinding them out. Then lost by fall in the semis, and then lost to LaRoque 10-0, and then lost like probably the worst draw she could get. She got the Japanese wrestler for 5th. So does not qualify the weight. Now, this is the weight that we're coming up on 72 here. Amita Lore, 7-0, 6-0, 12-2, 8-2. Okay. So I think we've talked about this. She was too young for the Olympic trials in 21 by like a month, maybe 2 months. So if you just kind of watch stuff in an Olympic cycle, and that's okay. Like people are busy. Like there's a bunch of sports. I watch track every 4 years, so
Yep.
I watch discus every 4 years, or the triple jump, or swimming. Okay. So if you're new to this, if you're that kind of fan, welcome. Happy to have you. She was not on that person's radar in 2021. She is unbelievable. She might be the best wrestler on our team right now in terms of not credentials, but who's wrestling the best right now. It's debatable, but she's in the conversation for sure.
Mhm.
She won the world.
Sure.
Okay.
In fact, she won 3 world titles last year. She won juniors, U20, and the seniors.
She won 20, 23 in seniors.
And then she's already won 23 this year.
She's
seniors,
crushing life. Okay.
And she's got one more to wrestle, U20s.
Right.
Something like that.
But she's at 72. And again, if you don't follow women's weights closely, she has to go up to 76 or down to 68. Going to be super interesting.
She's going down.
Yeah. She's got some time, obviously, right? But the descent starts now.
Yep.
So I would think she would be the favorite at 68. I mean, you have the people that were there. You have people like Forrest. Blades is up at 76, but I think she's the favorite.
Yeah.
And I think she's.
I mean, to be honest with you, she might be the favorite if she goes up also. So she's that good.
That's a fascinating. Okay. Yeah.
It is. She's just a hammer. I mean, my opinion.
She's on her ascent going up the hill, and Adeline Gray's closer to the top or on the backside of her career, obviously just age-wise.
Yes.
She's had an unbelievable career.
Yes.
But there's just a massive difference in age and experience there. So
correct.
But yeah, I think if you're Steiner, you probably want her down because you want Adeline Gray or Blades on the team, right?
Yeah.
And we have a lot of really good wrestlers at 68, but we don't have an Amita Lure there.
True.
So anyway, any other comments on that before we jump over?
No, I guess the only comment I have, and I said that I thought the United States was starting to close the gap a little bit on Japan. And I don't know if Japan heard me, but they shoved it right back down my throat saying, no, you're not.
But you was wrong, dog.
I was way wrong. They're so
wrong,
dominant. And as good as I think the United States women have been and are moving in the right direction, we hadn't even started climbing the hill to catch Japan yet. I mean, it's like a whole different thing. So hopefully, in the next 4 or 5 years, 6 years, it takes a while because they're putting out the younger girls also, and they're just better. They're just flat out better than we are.
Let's be positive. We are clearly the second best wrestling in the world, team in the world in women's wrestling. Okay. I understand we got goals, and I understand we're not happy or satisfied. Let's say we're not satisfied with second, but our team took second in the world.
Yep.
So
I'm just going by what I said earlier, that I thought the United States was starting to catch Japan, and I found out in this World Championships that I wasn't accurate on that comment.
Right. Well, GT and I knew you were inaccurate in that sentence. So,
well, thank you, David. You should have told me then and not now.
Mark, it's your opinion. Like, we don't all want to agree all the time. Okay. All right. So we're going to dig into tiers here. I don't know how far we're going to get. It's 10:40. Maybe we just do 125 today. I think we can probably get through the rest of these. I mean, I know U23s are coming up next month, and Super 32s, but it's a relatively slow time of the schedule, at least on the USA Wrestling docket. So on the international level. I know there's preseason nationals and stuff like that. All right, so let's.
David, I got to take a call real quick from work. Why don't you talk a little bit, get it set up? I'll be right back.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so we'll talk about where the rankings are first at 125. So intermatch rankings have, in order, Matt Ramos, Anthony Noto, Richie Figueroa, Eddie Ventresca, Eric Barnett, Dean Peterson, Pat McKee, Mike DiAgostino, Steve O'Poulin, Unger, Kaler, Camacho, Ayala, Caleb Smith, Braxton Brown, Yori Volk, Noah Certain, Tyson Terrakina, Robbie Howard, Ryan Miller, and Nick Babin are your top 20. Flo has Ramos, Noto, Figueroa, Ventresca, Barnett, Poulin, Unger, Camacho, Peterson, Pat McKee, Ayala, DiAgostino, Caleb Smith, Kaler, Brown, Volk, Certain, Terrakina, Ryan Miller, and Babin. So those are your top 20s. So was going to talk to Mark about this. Okay, good.
I'm here.
Good timing. Okay. So basically I read off the top 20 from Flo and Intermat.
Yep.
And I will say this. This is probably the one time of the year where I miss doing the rankings, because we created a very strong following at Track Wrestling, you and I did, and Annie Hamilton getting those rankings out. And just like now when the colleges are posting like, hey, where their kids are ranked, Track was always in there. And that was very cool because those were rankings that our names were on. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we can do this a couple different ways. All right. Like last year, I think we picked our finalists and then we picked a non-top 8er. Okay. So we can do that.
I think, yeah.
So one of the things I kind of wanted to do, but we should talk about this because we're going to do this 10 times. I kind of wanted us to pick our top 8 because then I wanted us to see where we had our team scores.
Okay.
And then we can certainly pick a non-top 8 or All-American. And then when we get to those team scores, like, for example, if you don't pick Noah Certain in your top 8, you're like, well, I've got him top 16. Okay, well, we add a point to Mizzou kind of thing. I'm just using them as an example.
Okay.
So you were obviously not here when I read off the weights, but I'm not going to read it again for the viewers. But I know you've reviewed the rankings and stuff. Let's start with, I'll go first. I think this is maybe the most wide open weight. Okay. At the top. Like, I think if you go through the rest of the weights, like, I think most of them have a clear 2 or 3 people that you think are probably one of 2 or 3 people going to win the weight. Like 33, Fix and Vito, 41, Real Woods, and a couple other guys, 49, probably, Ridge Lovett, would have been, well, Sasso is moving up. But I mean, you go through, there's a ton of favorites, like a Carter Starachi and Aaron Brooks, some people like that, like heavyweight. If it's either, probably Gable, Kirk Fleet, Wyatt Hendrickson, people like that. Okay. 25 is fascinating to me. So we put together who All-American. Ramos took 2nd, Noto took 4th, Ventresca took 7th, Poulin, Barnett, Peterson, Unger were all round of 12s, Pat McKee, Tremblay, Nick Babin round of 16. So, but then you have guys like Jacob Camacho coming back, Drake Ayala coming back. So I just feel like this weight, I kind of think I know who I'm going to pick. But there's some people like Pat McKee didn't place last year, and he seems to struggle on the front side of the bracket. But if he made the finals, I'm not sure it would shock us. So,
agreed.
Your thoughts overall on the weight?
I think it's one of the most wide open weights at the NCAAs this year. I don't think I pretty much know that because you got guys like Figueroa, from Arizona State, who basically was undefeated last year as a redshirt freshman. He'll be a sophomore this year. I was mistaken. I thought he was a freshman, but he won't be. So he's got experience. I think he's got to be considered one of the favorites at that weight. Noto had a really good national tournament, but had some losses during the year. I think I think it's basically going to be between Ramos and Figueroa. That's probably who I would pick in the finals right now.
So Noto only had 1 or 2 losses. Okay.
Yeah.
His problem wasn't losses. His problem was Lock Haven's schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then the other thing is Figs actually beat Ramos head-to-head at Cliff Keen.
Yep.
Also beat Unger. So you and me talked about this. So we'll have this conversation real quick and then we'll dig into where we think, we'll start putting guys in slots. Okay. There's an argument for Richie Figueroa to be number 1. It's not the best argument, in my opinion.
Sure.
Okay. Like I would not rank him number 1. Okay. But like I actually talked to the Arizona State, one of their coaches, and told him that. He goes, how's that? And I'm like, well, Ramos is the highest ranked guy coming back and he beat Ramos head-to-head. So that's an argument, right? And he was undefeated. It's not like he beat Ramos and had 4 other losses or something.
Sure.
So, body of work's pretty good. But the other argument is, well, he was behind Courtney and Courtney finished behind Ramos. Plus, you and me always gave the most weight to how somebody did at NCAAs.
Correct.
So, so the 3 All-Americans, I would have probably ranked Figueroa 4th. I would have ranked him behind the 3 returning All-Americans. Would you have done the same?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
But now that you're letting me rank this weight class?
No. This is not rankings and predictions are different.
Agreed.
Okay. Rankings and predictions are different. Okay. So those are very, very different. All right. So I didn't rank Gable Stevenson number 1 when he was a freshman. I told you Jaden Cox was going to win nationals as a freshman, and we can't rank him number 1. So very, very different conversations. Okay. So, let's be clear on that. All right. So you want to go first or you want me to go first?
No, I'll go first. I think
we're doing top 8.
My top 8 is going to be Ramos, Figueroa.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Noto.
Okay.
Ventresca.
Okay.
Barnett. Unger. McKee.
Ayala.
Is that 8?
That's 7.
Ayala. 8.
Ayala's 8. I'm surprised you have them that low.
I'm just putting them in the top 8 right now.
No. We're doing it in order.
Oh, we're doing it in order.
We're doing team scores.
Oh, my bad.
We said this.
Okay.
We literally said
I'm going to go Figueroa number 1. Figueroa wins national tournament.
All right, dude. I know I got to start over. I literally had to. Well, I'm writing them down.
Okay.
We were fairly clear on this, right?
No, obviously not, because I was just doing my top 8 right now. But okay.
Hold on.
I think Figueroa wins the national tournament. I think Ramos is 2nd. I'm gonna be a homer here, and I'm gonna say that Mitch McKee is 3rd. I'm gonna take Drake Ayala 4. Then I'll put in Noto at 5. Barnett at 6. Peterson at 7.
He wasn't even in your top 8 a minute ago.
Camacho at 8.
Okay, and so you are, just so you know, you are not picking Eddie Ventresca, who is a returning All-American.
Correct.
Okay. And do you want to pick a non-top 8er right now?
Well, I think I've already done that. I've got guys that are in the final 4 that aren't in the top 8.
Okay, yeah. You're fair. You're good. Okay, sounds good. All right, so I'm going to read these back to you. Figs 1, Ramos 2, McKee 3, Ayala 4, Noto 5, Barnett 6, Peterson 7, Camacho 8.
Yes.
Okay. I agree with Figs and I agree with Ramos. This gets tough for me. So, because again, I feel like those guys are a tier. Okay. I'm going to go Camacho third.
Okay.
And then like all these Big Ten people just beat each other up in this weight, you know?
Yeah.
So it's so tough. I'll go Barnett 4, Key 5, and Tresca 6. You know, and the thing is, I think Ayala is going to do better than 7. So who do I bump here? Let's see. I'm going to make Ayala 4. Ayala 4. And slide everybody down a spot. And I'm going to go Noto 8. I like Noto. I just think, like, I think that schedule's tough. And I think the thing that we don't know about this is, and there's a lot of stuff we don't know, but like, this was like when Joe Colon was at Northern Iowa, and no analogy is perfect, okay?
Yep. Yep.
But because they were back in like the EWL or something back then, like they were in the same conference as the schools out east. And then when he packed Tony Ramos at Midlands, I'm like, that guy's going to be like top 2 seed at nationals, because if Ramos wins the Big Tens, you know, if I win the Big Tens and you pin me and you don't have any bad losses, you're going to be ranked ahead of me or seated ahead of me at nationals.
You're right.
So why am I drawing a complete blank? What is the website we always use that pulls up everybody's records from last year?
Oh, that's a good question, dude, because you're the one that usually pulls this up.
Okay. Well, at some point we're going to get on that, because we can talk, but like, I don't know who Lock Haven wrestles, and I don't know who they wrestle at 125. Okay. I mean, that's because.
Sure.
So
they usually wrestle Penn State during the year, if that's what you're asking. So there's one.
See if I can pull up their wrestling schedule real quick.
While you're doing that, David, I'm a little surprised that you do not have Unger and you did not have Mitch McKee in your top 8.
I have Mitch McKee in my top 8.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I had him 5th and bumped him to 6th.
Okay.
And I mean, you got to bump somebody, right?
Sure.
Okay, so this is fascinating. Princeton Open. Then guess who they wrestle at the Journeyman? First one.
Iowa.
No, for 125. I'm in Iowa didn't go to Journeyman.
Okay.
Arizona State.
Okay.
So that's gigantic.
That's huge.
Like gigantic. They also wrestle North Carolina State. So, I mean, the problem is, here's their back half of the year schedule, okay? So this is the new year, 2024. Franklin and Marshall Open, Harvard, Gardner-Webb, Davidson, Buffalo, Bloomsburg, George Mason, Ryder, Matt Town Open, Clarion, Navy, Northern Illinois, Cleveland State, Edinburgh, Max. So no one should touch him the second half of the year.
Yeah.
Now, the first half of the year, congrats to Nate Carr Jr. for putting a good schedule together, working backwards. North Carolina State, UNI, Ohio State, Little Rock, George Mason tournament, Lock Haven tournament, Navy tournament, and then those duels, you know. So, I mean, Ohio State and Northern Iowa, I mean, you know, they're going to have guys there, but I don't think they're going to have anybody super highly ranked, right?
I don't know. Yeah, we're going to have to find out, because I'd like to know where Corey Land's going to wrestle this year, what weight. If he's going to be down to 25 or I would imagine that's where he's going to be because Biscaglia is going to be at 33.
Okay, and he's really good. At least was really good in high school.
Yep.
But see, so like think about that. That's a trap match, right? Like if you lose that match, you're hosed because, I mean, let's say he loses to Corey Land and loses a 1-point overtime match to Figs.
Okay.
And beats everybody else.
Okay. It's going to be all, well, depending on who else he beats, but second half of the season, he doesn't really wrestle anybody that's in the top
10
here. Yeah.
Top
so,
10.
I mean,
he could be the 11th. He could be the 11th.
How those other two guys do that he lost to, obviously, because that's going to also affect where he ends up as a seed.
No, that's gigantically going to affect it. And that's my point, right? Like, so if say you lose to a Corey Land, then, you know, like I'm looking at 125. This is shocking. So stop me when we hit, these are Flo's rankings, but they're very close. Purdue, Lock Haven, Arizona State, Virginia Tech, Wisconsin, Northern Colorado. So Steve O'Poulin, but then Cornell, NC State, Rutgers, Minnesota, Iowa, Michigan, Nebraska, Oregon State, Maryland, Wyoming. You got to hit number 16 before you hit another Big 12 guy. So like if Corey Land, say, were to beat him, I mean, you know, Corey Land's going to be in the rankings behind Poulin, Volk, Certain, Terrakina. I mean,
probably Spratley.
Well, he's not in the rankings yet, but sure, right?
Yeah.
Anthony Lorenzo is in these rankings. Tanner Jordan is in these rankings. That Spratley's ranked by Intermat. So yes, like that Corey Land match, if that happens, is gigantic.
Yep.
In only a negative way. Like if he wins, it doesn't help him. Okay. But if he loses.
But let's not forget, I think last year one of the top 4 kids in the country was seeded 22nd, if I'm not mistaken.
Who's that?
North Carolina, 25-pounder, North Carolina States.
Who are you talking about? Tremblay?
No, who's the number 4 ranked kid by
you can't just throw out names without any data, bro.
Yeah,
it's terrible radio.
Well, Virginia Tech.
Ventresca.
He was like ranked 22nd. He was seeded 22nd at the national tournament.
Yes, because he wasn't the starter till the middle of January.
What I'm saying, though, is that it can happen where those lower seeds come in there and do really well. So,
and this is probably the one weight where it's most likely, because if you said to me, Unger's gone All-American, I'm like, okay. Like, just because I didn't pick him, and it's not like I mean, you just have to pick people.
I agree. It's going to be one of those weights where, besides that top tier, and let's not kid ourselves, Ramos could have lost a couple matches at nationals before he beat Spencer Lee in the semis. So he had to come back.
He got majored at the Big Ten.
Yeah, but he came back at the nationals also to win a couple of really close matches.
Right. So I think what we're saying here is this: there's not a ton of high-level consistency. The only person we saw that had high-level consistency was Figs, and he didn't wrestle a whole season.
Yes, and he was a backup.
He did some spot starting. Okay, but like he had a 1-point match with Noah Certain. Now he won it, and, you know, I'm high on Noah Certain, probably more so than anybody else on this show, but he didn't place at nationals. And then at the same time, Figs had a 1-point match with Matt Ramos, who had one of the 3 greatest upsets in the history of college wrestling.
Yep.
So this can just go a lot of different ways.
Yep.
So, all right, we're actually perfect on time. We're right at 11 o'clock. So beautiful. Ventresca wrestles for Virginia Tech, not North Carolina State, for future reference.
I couldn't think of the name, and I just knew somebody was up there from one of those schools in the ACC.
You were ACC. You were in the conference. Okay.
That's all I was thinking is, and I know he was ranked like 22nd and plays, you know, top 4, so top 5. So
you're good. So, All right. So next week, we'll probably do 33, probably 41, because I don't really know what else we're going to talk about. Okay. We'll scoop up GT, get his 25 picks, and then kind of go from there. So appreciate everybody watching and listening. This is one of my favorite hours of my week. Thanks again to everybody to help us make Border Brawl a success. We will speak to y'all next week.